Jubilate Deo, 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 Deo.
Jubilate Deo, omnis terra.
Servite Domino in laetitia, introvite in conspectu eius in exultatione, in exultatione. Jubilate Deo, 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 Deo.
Moniam suavis est Dominus, in aeternam misericordia Deus.
Quoniam suavis est Dominus et usque in generationem, in generationem, generationem, veritas Deus, jubilas Jubilate Deo, omnis terra.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters in Christ, and welcome. Good to be with you. This week I was in a Bible study and a passage from James came up, and it caught me as I read it then, and I thought about it more as the week went on, and I thought, you know what, this might be a time, put that passage out there, just say a few words about it. In a particular area of human relationships, one that sometimes isn't even thought of, but I think on a gut level, when you hear it, many people will say, tell me more. So I'm hoping that's the case in what I've got to share with you today. Very particular application of something that comes out of this particular passage. Here's the passage, James 1:19. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves and, on going away, immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, the religion is worthless. So that caught me this week. And as the week went on and numerous conversations took place, one of them came around the idea of what it means to be arguing with people and how few people do it well. In fact, it's one of the most intimate forms of interactions between people. And, you know, there are people who just decide to avoid and other people who just decide the nuclear option is right. And if you've been around at all in the last year, you've seen a lot of forms and fashions of how people think it's an appropriate way to interact with other human beings in the way they decide to argue, or the diatribes that they use in its place. But one of the most intimate forms of interactions between human beings in relationships is arguing. Like I said, some assume it's to be avoided at all costs, or worse, some think it's a form of exercising control over another human being. But when I come to doing premarital counseling with someone, I've got to say, one of the segments when we're talking about is how you argue with each other. Because when you're in a loving relationship with another human being, that doesn't preclude you from having an argument, and it doesn't preclude you from being mad. And in fact, sometimes you're going to be very mad with each other. But constructive arguing or fair fighting, it's something that's important to at least hear about. And what interests me is how often when I raise those two things, people just look at me, they just stare at me for a minute. I remember a couple years ago, I introduced the concept to somebody, and she just laughed at me. She says, are you kidding me? Arguing's not meant to be fair. It's fighting, and you're meant to win. And I pointed out, I said, but if winning is the whole thing of an argument, and you're in an argument with someone that you love, and winning is the sole purpose, are you even working out the problems? And she said, I'm working out the problems because I'm getting my way. I said, yeah, I've heard that before. So between me and you, constructive arguing, fair fighting is a real thing. Only if you decide it is. It is meant to work out problems in relationships constructively. Now look, arguments happen in all relationships. But the practice of constructive fighting, fair arguing, isn't. In fact, a lot of people don't know, as I've been saying, that there can be rules. So I'm going to throw out some things for you to think about today. Fair arguing is different in that it is striving to resolve real issues between people who love and care for each other, generally speaking, with a sincere desire of building a continuing, stronger relationship. Healthy arguing results in better communications between people, and while it does not mean you'll always come to agreement, there is a greater chance of it. The purpose of it is to go beyond the sometimes compulsive need to be justified and right, to get to the root of an issue for the purpose of improving things. The practice of beating another into a corner or to overwhelm and subdue them into compliance or withdrawal, or at the least silence them, is domination. And it's abuse. It does not come from love. For fair fighting to take place, pride, competitiveness, anger, frustration, and so on, all the normal feelings that come up need to be managed. In other words, it takes an intentional effort, and it can be exhausting, but you got to engage the brain. The goal and point of fair fighting is to resolve problems in a healthy way and work toward building a better relationship, a better understanding of each other. And with the one you love, you're really wanting to build a greater trust and intimacy. So I've got 7 rules, general rules for fair fighting. And today I'd just like to introduce them to you. But in general, there are also some fundamental and helpful to-dos and not-to-dos to always keep in mind leading up to the 7. For example, in the to-dos, first and foremost, remember your love for the person you are arguing with. How we deal with real disagreements has deep consequences in relationships. Building it in positive ways or breaking it down in negative ways, often it's done incrementally. Therefore, it requires a mutual commitment to being honest and open and having sincere intention and willingness to work together towards having a stronger relationship. Forged in a difficult time, most people don't like fights. But we needn't fear them if we understand what we're doing. So one of those to-dos, keep and observe the values of dignity, honor, and respect for each other. Consider compromise. Your partner's vision of reality is just as real as yours. Neither of you is totally objective. You got to forget the past. You got to stay with the here and now, deal with the present argument. Stay away from universals. No one's always wrong. No one does something all the time. And by the way, something that I've just seen practiced a lot in the last year, and just go ahead and let's name it. Overloading your partner with a large number of grievances that you've stored up and held, or this long litany of things that you just want to hit somebody with, isn't going to address any issue. It's just managing to make your partner feel hopeless. And if that's your goal, that's the way to do it. And a lot of people use that exactly to accomplish that. That kind of behavior suggests more about how you're handling communication problems, and that you may not know what's really troubling you. Also, exercise humility. You know, I often say about Christians, Christians need not ride high horses because the fall is hard. And also, be open to your feelings and to your partners. There's also a few do-nots to keep in mind. Do not assume you know what your partner is thinking. Check out your assumptions before you act and speak to them. How many times have you felt consoled when your partner says, "I know what you're thinking, and let me tell you what I think about that"? Did that make you feel well? Did that make you feel heard? So don't assume you know what your partner is thinking. Check out your assumptions before you act on them. In fact, right related to that, don't tell your partner what he's feeling or she's thinking or what they know. Don't assume you already know everything. Don't label a partner nor their feelings. Name-calling, sweeping judgments are simply hurtful and unfair. They're more destructive than helpful. So don't use sarcasm or ridicule. It is dirty, it is juvenile, and it's disrespectful fighting. And it is, by intent, meant to be cruel. In other words, it shouldn't have a root in love. It doesn't have a root in love. And just in case anybody needs to hear it, physical and emotional violence and the threat of them, including being verbally abusive, intolerant, demeaning, denigrating, or dismissive of the other, are all unfair. They are mean tactics used to win or to dominate another, not love and understand. So with those as my general to-dos and don't-dos, my 7 very general guidelines for fair fighting. 1, know when to talk. Develop a sense of timing. There's a time to talk, a time to listen, and a time to live one another alone. If you got something that's really bothering you, the best time may not to be to bring it up in the presence of a lot of people. If there's something that you think is going to make you very emotional, maybe you shouldn't raise it on the way to a funeral. There are times that you need to talk, and you should be respectful of your need for those times. And there's sometimes people don't want to talk, and we need to be respectful of that time as well. Second rule here. You've got to note the emotional level of the conversation. Consider the climate of the discussion on its emotional scale. Are you getting the cold treatment? Or is it feeling pretty cool? Is it neutral, warm, or is it hot? Gotta say, every single one of those conditions should be understood. Each of them better be understood. Intimacy thrives in a warmer climate. Sometimes partners in a conversation must create a mood that is lighter, more relaxed, or encouraging to make serious talk possible. And by the way, humor is a wonderful tool for communication, absolutely is. But for everybody who has the gift of humor, they should be aware it has two edges. You can do a lot of damage with the ability to make laughter. Because sometimes, and we know, those of us who use humor, that we use it dishonestly to hurt another person and not be held liable. I'm just saying it as a joke. Yeah, we know. Look, if things get too emotional, mutually agree to take a break and walk away. Walking away without such an agreement is manipulation. I once knew a couple that got into such a bad fight that they both decided to just storm away. And they gave each other the silent treatment. What started off as one single fight that went to a silent treatment that basically went on for about a year and a half. Can you imagine that? A year and a half. Not only did they not speak to each other, they were sleeping in the same bed together. They went on vacation together. They had dinner together almost every night. And in a year and a half, they did not talk to each other. Not because they were still mad, but because they didn't know how to come back to each other anymore. You know what happens in a year and a half of living like that? Your relationship changes, and not all for the best. The pain of that lasted both of them the rest of their lives. So when it gets too hot and you realize you're going to be losing control, and we all can get there, we both should have, all of us should have, the latitude to say to the other, look, right now I've got to stop. I'm either too tired because this is exhausting, or I'm too mad that I can't gather my thoughts, or things are just getting too long and I just got to pause. And the other, regardless of how much we want to continue, must respect and give dignity and grace and credibility to that request and stop. But you got to set another time, a definite time, to conclude the discussion, the argument, and resolve the issue as best you are able. Otherwise, the problem just lingers like an untreated open sore. Storming away is manipulation, but needing to leave may be the wise choice. Think. Consult your real thoughts and feelings before you speak. Emotional reactions are inappropriate as responses. Number 3, learn how to listen. Listening takes energy. Listen all over. Listen actively with your mind and your body and your spirit. It's difficult exercise. It's demanding. Be open to understanding the one you love. Refrain from resisting the other person's view without first learning what that person is trying to say to you. Remember your kindergarten lesson. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you will listen twice as much as you speak. To that end, if you're engaging listening, it's important for you to ask clarifying questions. Express yourself clearly. Say what you mean what you say, choose your words with care. Now here's a little tactic to make sure you're being heard and to assure the other person you understand what he or she is saying. Repeat back their points without judgment. So someone comes and says to you, I'm sick and tired of this, and this is what's happening. Before you argue the point, let the other person know that you understand what they're saying. If you've been in an argument, you know what I'm saying when I'm saying voices get raised. And you know why people raise their voices when they're talking to another person and they're angry? It's because they're trying to get to the other person. They're trying to have the other person hear what they're saying. So they naturally move to the one thing that's obvious. They start shouting at each other. And you know, great communication always begins when people are shouting at each other. People shout at each other because they're not being heard. You hear somebody's voice going up, pause for a minute. Think, choose your words carefully, and repeat back the point that the person is saying without judgment. No qualifying statements. You can say, "You're saying this." If the person thinks you're hearing them, their voice will probably drop. And they'll say, "Well, wait a minute. No, I'm not saying that exactly. I'm saying this." And then you can come back and say, "Oh, then you're saying this." And the other person says, "Yes." Once you've got that point known, you're not conceding their point, then you can tell them how you're wrong or they're wrong. But first, make sure they know, the person that you love, that you know, you hear what they're saying. And it's fair that they give you the same consideration, that they repeat back to you your point so that you know that they hear what you're saying. So it's good to ask for and give feedback of major points. And by the way, don't allow counter-demands into a discussion until the original points and requests are clearly understood. Do more than complain, by the way. Ask for a reasonable change that will help. Sometimes that does better in articulating what's going on. 5, respect and recognize each other's vulnerabilities. You know, nobody can hurt you quite as deeply as the persons you love and trust. They know your weak spots. They know where you hurt. So you need to respect those places and avoid using them and bringing them out. That says more about where you are emotionally in an argument than anything else. It says that you're raising the stakes of this. You're trying to hurt a person because maybe you feel hurt. Beware of and be gentle with, as best you're able, with the other person's emotional tender spots. You know, it's not fair in the midst of an argument to say you're being just like your father, or you're being just like your mother, or you're just being like this, or you're bringing that back out, and then suddenly the whole thing gets moved around into an even bigger issue, and now it becomes competitive, doesn't it? So, realize it takes about a second to verbally hurt someone, cut them. And the healing process takes a lot longer. And if you hurt someone you love, think about it. You'll both suffer for it. Just remember what it's like when somebody else hurts the one you love, what you feel about that. It is fair, by the way, in an argument to call each other and violating fair arguing rules. In other words, if someone steps over the line and does something that you understand is a violation of the fair fighting, you both should be able to know, says, hold on now, that's not fair. And if we're in a mature argument right there, the other person has to stop in that moment because they love you and recognize and acknowledge the fact that they stepped over the line on that one, apologize for their error, but continue with their discussion. In all and everything that has to do in relationships, sometimes this is even harder. Exercise grace. It's the strangest thing to say when you're mad at somebody. When you love that person and they're mad, they're hurting. Now, if they weren't mad at you, what would you be doing for them, with them, to support them? But when it's against you, or you feel like it's against you, but it's really about a problem. Exercising grace keeps doors open. A commitment to it is tantamount to saying you love each other. So is listening. 6, keep your focus specific. Deal with what you have to deal with without bringing up other issues to confuse the main topic, Be specific when you have an issue. If there's a problem that has to be raised at a time other than the time it occurs, set a time to talk about it. But by the way, do not bring it up in the midst of another argument. Confine your discussion to one issue at a time. Otherwise, you're diffusing the issue and working to avoid the most difficult part of the problem. And by the way, overloading your partner with a large number of grievances doesn't address the issue. Again, it only manages to make your partner feel hopeless. Such behavior suggests more about how you're handling problems and that you may not always know what's troubling you. 7, after an argument, when the time is right, evaluate how you did. Apologize for the mistakes you've made. Give credit where credit is due to your partner. Affirm what you can affirm. Concede what you need to concede. Forgive where forgiveness is needed. Celebrate what you should celebrate. This is love. There's never a single winner in an honest, intimate argument. Either you both win more trust and therefore more intimacy, or you both lose it. And those are my 7 general rules. And with that, I'd like to conclude with this reading from Paul. Often, we just listen to it and it goes through in one ear and out the other. But it's 1 Corinthians 13, and I think it's important that we remember just what a great gift it is to be able to love another. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels but do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It is not resentful. It doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part. We prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these things. And the greatest of these is love. Keep it real, my brothers and sisters in Christ. Keep the faith and share it too. Peace.
I want to walk with you, Jesus. Feel your presence and know you're near. I want to see you, Jesus, move in power and cast out fear. I need to hear you now. I need to know it's you. Standing on your promises, I know your word is true. You're bigger than what I see. It's you in exchange for me. 'Cause even the impossible can be reality. Jesus, I believe. Jesus, I believe. You're safe.